It's mostly attacks on civilian infrastructure, on water supplies, on energy supplies. And it looks as if Russia, and Putin in particular, having been humiliated by Ukraine's occupation of a big chunk of the Kursk region inside Russia, is desperately trying to show that they've still got the initiative in this war.
Yeah, look, now Russia has launched one of its biggest aerial attacks in its ongoing conflict with Ukraine, with energy facilities being the main targets of the assault. At least 6 people have been killed and major power outages have been seen across the country. That is audio taken during the attack. In response, Ukraine have launched their own drone attacks on Russian residential buildings amid their cross-border incursion into Russia's southern Kursk region. In a statement issued on Telegram, the Ukrainian President Zelensky said Russia's attacks targeted critical civilian infrastructures and called for aid from Western allies. Let's speak now to the former ambassador to Ukraine, Leigh Turner. Leigh, a warm welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Hello. How effective has this latest attack been from Russia, and what exactly have they been targeting?
So they've launched what is pretty certain to be the largest bombardment of Ukraine by Russia in the last 2.5 years of this war. The Ukrainians say it was 236 cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and lots of these Iranian Shahed drones attacking cities right across Ukraine. And you're right, Kate, it's mostly attacks on civilian infrastructure, on water supplies, on energy supplies. And it looks as if Russia, and Putin in particular, having been humiliated by Ukraine's occupation of a big chunk of the Kursk region inside Russia, is desperately trying to show that they've still got the initiative in this war.
Yeah, look, Volodymyr Zelensky has issued another plea to Western partners to step up their assistance. Will that plea be met?
I think it's there's several things we're talking about here. One is the idea that Western allies themselves should help to shoot down Russian drones and missiles. And Zelensky referred to the help that the US, UK, and France gave to Israel back in April when Iran launched missile and drone attacks on Israel, and France, the UK, and the US got involved in shooting down those missiles. And Zelensky, a good politician, he said life has the same value everywhere, implying that perhaps we should help with these ones too. The difference, of course, is that the risk of escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war is very great, and we don't want any kind of shooting war between NATO and Russian forces. But the answer is to give the Ukrainians the tools to do the job of defending themselves. We need to give them those weapons, and we need to help them develop their own weapons. There are 2 very interesting new weapons that Ukraine has developed itself. One is this Neptune cruise missile, and also a brand new thing, something called the Palyanitsa cruise missile. We don't know much about it. I'm glad we don't, because it's a secret new development. But we need to help Ukraine to be able to defend itself, because if Russia wins this war, it will be emboldened to attack again, as it did after the attack of 2014. And moreover, every country around the world that fancies taking a bite out of its neighbors will be emboldened, opening up a kind of Pandora's box of potential global conflict that will cost us far more than supplying arms to Ukraine now.
Yeah, look, Zelensky's called for aviation support, F-16s and air defence systems are what he is asking for. And this attack coming 2 days after Ukraine celebrated its Independence Day. And as you've leaned into there, Leigh, it comes on the back of a pretty embarrassing incursion into Russia into the Kursk region by Zelensky. I suppose the question now is, will Russia continue to agitate Ukraine? Will it continue to make these, methodical, targeted attacks?
For Vladimir Putin, this is an existential war. If Putin, having launched this war, quite unnecessarily, there was no threat to Russia, not a single Russian had been killed by Ukrainian forces before Russia launched this war in 2014. Having launched this war, Putin has to win it. And so he will be desperate to do anything he can to make sure that Russia wins this. And we've seen, unfortunately, strong advances by Russia in the center of Ukraine, in the Donetsk region, at the same time that Ukraine has been pushing forward in the Kursk area. And I'm afraid the likeliest outcome at the moment looks like a continued war of attrition. What we must never forget, of course, is that although Russia likes to portray itself as being invincible, as being indomitable, as having limitless resources, none of this is true. Russia is running out of weapons, and it's also running out of manpower. There was some interesting statistics came out last week suggesting that the average age of Russian prisoners of war had increased from 32 to 38 years old over the last 2 years. So we mustn't give Russia the benefit of the doubt in terms of assuming that they have to win this war. That's not true at all.
And I wonder how comparable the attacks are by both countries, to the point where both Russia and Ukraine have denied targeting civilians. I mean, is that really the case?
It's a matter of degree. When you have a very intensive war like this going on, unfortunately, some collateral damage or some injuries and deaths of civilians are inevitable. But I think the way that Russia in particular has been running this war, Russia is, of course, the aggressor to begin with, but we have seen repeatedly in places like Mariupol or in Bucha or in other cities that Russia has eventually overrun, they have absolutely destroyed those cities. And we're guessing that the deaths amongst Ukrainian civilians are in excess of 10,000 civilians who've been killed within the last 2 years. I've seen evidence of Ukrainian attacks within Russia also causing civilian deaths, but it's nothing like the same scale. I saw a video today on the BBC of a Ukrainian missile hitting a tall building, I think in Saratov. But this is not a war of annihilation against Russia in the way that Russia's war against Ukraine is exactly that.
Look, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your expertise on that. Leigh Turner, who is the former British ambassador to Ukraine and author of Lessons in Diplomacy, Politics, Power and Parties. Good to speak to you, Leigh. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kate.
Cheers.